coming back to At My Garage again? I thought this could wait till next week, but apparently we're going again tonight. We're going to touch on a couple things. We're going to talk about Trump attacking Brian Kemp at his Atlanta rally. We're going to talk about Kamala Harris apparently is a part of every win as far as the administration is concerned is now, and neither candidate really wants to deal with an away game in terms of the debate. So here we go. Let's get started with this. I mean, first off, imagine going into a state that you need to win, right? You go into a place and you're trying to convince everybody there that you really want them to support you. And the whole problem I have right now is that Trump's entire platform has been built on attack, right? That's fine. But when the attack starts turning inward, right? There's a term we use, circling the wagons, right? We're at a point now, you've already been the nominee. Now it's time to circle the wagons, right? Circle the wagons comes back from when frontiersmen would go out. They were traveling west during the Western expansion period, and they were traveling in covered wagons. And in order to defend the wagon camp from Native American raids, they would circle the wagons. The wagons would form a circular defense, and then they would set up riflemen and people on the outside of the wagons, and they would fire at the attacking Native American tribes. Right? It was a good defensive platform. Right? This was what it was. So you circle the wagons, but when you start firing inward in a circle, all you do is shoot at yourself. Right? And that's kind of what we're seeing right now. So what we're seeing internally is Trump attacking a pretty popular governor from Georgia, right, and effectively a swing state. I mean, Georgia at this point is probably a swing state, maybe not a swing state. Maybe let's call it leans right. It should go right. It should go red again. Maybe it was an anomaly past time, but it's effectively a swing state, right? So on Truth Social, we've seen Donald Trump. Here's the quote, right? Congratulations to Georgia GOP Chair Josh McCoon for going after the failed former lieutenant governor of Georgia, who realized he could never win again and quit his run for office. His name is Jeff Duncan. He's a total lightweight and went to work at a low salary for fake news CNN. His sole function is to knock Donald J. Trump. People don't want to hear him, or that. And it's only in many reasons that CNN's ratings are so low. Although Jake Tapper and Dana Bash are very fair to me on crooked Joe Biden debate. Georgia should throw this bum out of the party. He's unelectable and not respected by anyone, other than your lightweight governor, Brian Kemp, who, if it wasn't for me, would have never been governor. Okay, look. All right, fine, attack like a moderate that may be not supporting you. That's totally fine. Like, you can do that. That's not even it's not even an issue. But attacking Brian Kemp, why? What does that do for you? Where's the positive from that entire part? Right. Brian Kemp is a well-liked Georgia governor. Right. He has a good history there. Brian Kemp's at the time of the election in 2022 when he beat out Stacey Abrams, Brian Kemp had 53%. He was 53%. A favorability candidate, right? Like that was at the election period, at the peak when people are at the most odds with each other. Stacey Abrams, Brian Kemp at odds, 53% on the polls, and according to 538 said that Brian Kemp was the guy, right? And it only got better from there. Brian Kemp's policies were effectively what Georgians wanted, right? So people don't dislike Brian Kemp, but to attack him just basically out of nowhere, right? This is out of nowhere attack coming after him for really nothing, right? There's really no reason. And unfortunately, the far right, and I hate to say it this way, but the MAGA forefront have really said, "Oh, well, Brian Kemp didn't defend him when he was in need, when he was going after the electorates and saying that there was a lot of false voting, there was the election was fraudulent." you can't argue. You can't argue this point, and I'll tell you why. You can't argue it from the left. You can't argue it from the right. You can't argue it from the center. People believe that there was fraud in Georgia at the time, and even if there was fraud, and even if there wasn't fraud, to attack Brian Kemp 4 years after the election date doesn't do you any good. It doesn't do you any good. All it does is alienate the people who might have been in your camp in the first place. Does that mean they're going to go vote for Kamala Harris? Not necessarily. But they're sure as hell not excited to go vote for you. And if the entire point of the GOP electorate machine is to get out the GOP vote, alienating people who would 100% vote for you if you just played into their wheelhouse, and they're not going to go vote for Kamala Harris. You're not going to turn these people into Kamala Harris fans, right? You're just eliminating people to help support you. It's unproductive. It's unproductive. It doesn't do any good, right? And attacking Brian Kemp is just such a waste of time, right? And there's so many things to attack, right? Elsewhere, there's so many other places to go with this, but attacking Kemp is just such a waste of time. Liberty Mutual's not the sponsor; it's just the mug I have right now. Anyway, I'm not going to spend much more time on that, but the reality is, wasting time on attacking Brian Kemp is stupid, and frankly, it's a waste of our time. But you know what is not a waste of people's time? Is this sudden exposure of Kamala Harris being a part of every major policy win for the administration, right? Okay, this is the best. This is the best, and no one has said anything. No one's even brought it up, right? It's just been like, oh yeah, she's always been there, right? So most recently, the prisoner exchange with Russia, and Kamala Harris is there, right? Kamala Harris is at the prisoner exchange, welcoming home of the Americans. It's fantastic. Everyone loves having Americans come home, right? There's nothing wrong with that. Obviously, maybe the deal, Trump said that maybe the deal was more in favor for Russia. Okay, that's fine, but Kamala Harris has been on the road. She's been campaigning. She's been doing other things. And to suggest that she's suddenly a major part of the prisoner exchange negotiations with Russia is, I mean, come on, right? Like, it's just not, I don't believe it. Don't tell me she went to Wisconsin, right? And from Wisconsin, she's like, you know what? I'm on the call with Joe Biden and Vladimir Putin to make sure this prisoner exchange is dialed in, right? We want to get these people dialed in, right? We got it all figured out. It's, I'm a part of this. Come on. She would, at the very most, she signed her name onto some sort of piece of paper, right? Her name's on a piece of paper, and they had to have her sign it because she needs to be a part of wins for the administration, right? And suddenly, everything before Harris being the nominee for the Democrat Party, it was all Biden administration. Now, and I'm not sure why they're doing this, because I mean, frankly, the Biden administration isn't exactly is not some sort of beloved administration, right? It's not like they've done things that they're like, oh, it's not like Reagan's second term, right? Where Reagan just blew out the waters, or Bill Clinton's second term, right? It's just not that scenario, right? It's not where they're just going to waltz in. They can say whatever they want on camera, and they're going to win the election, whatever. Okay, the Biden administration's second term was always in question. It was in question from when he was running the first term, because he said he was going to be a one-term candidate, right? So the fact that they've now tied Harris to the Biden administration as if this has always been the case. She's been involved in everything from top down. She's making major decisions. That's not true, right? I won't say it that way. Maybe it is true, right? Maybe it is true. Maybe we're at a point where Biden wakes up. I hate to say this. Okay, if your default position, like as a human being, if your default position when you're walking around on day-to-day function, and your jaw is so slack from being so tired and so old that your just mouth is just open. And there's a term for this. There's a term for this. People call them their mouth breathers, right? And you walk around like this with your mouth open at all times because that's just your default position because you're so old. I mean, maybe you're not in charge anymore, right? Like maybe you're not in charge, right? And maybe that's the thing. Maybe Kamala Harris actually is in charge and Joe Biden is, Edith Wilson, and she's moving his hand, right? It's Weekend at Bernie's, 100%. Maybe that's the case. Maybe she is involved, and credit to her if she's doing double duty. But I find that hard to believe. I just find it hard to believe. I'll tell you why I find it hard to believe. Kamala Harris, up until this point, hasn't been involved in, according to the Biden administration, has been involved in incredibly little, and if they want to say, was nothing, right? She was involved in nothing until she became the nominee. Suddenly, she was involved in all the best and good parts of the Biden administration, right? All the best and good parts, but she was never assigned to tasks that failed, right? She was never the border czar. How could she have been? Border czar? What are you talking about? What are you talking about? What do you mean? No, that didn't happen, right? Okay. The tasks she's been assigned to have been failures. And so the media has done their best to hide her because, frankly, she's disliked. She was more disliked than Biden while they were in the midst of the administration because of this crazy shift. It suddenly has boosted according to 538, they boosted their likability, both Biden and Harris, and obviously Harris has surpassed Biden. Before she was below, right? She was more disliked than Biden just because everyone perceived her to be a kind of a do-nothing human being, right? And then all of a sudden, Biden drops out and he gains some sort of likability. His approval rating suddenly moves up just because he's not running anymore, which makes no sense, right? Like it's not like he's doing a better job as president. It's just because he's doing what people want him to do and not run. And then suddenly Harris's approval rating leapfrogs him, right? It just leapfrogs him. And why does it leapfrog him? It's just because the media is there to help support it. Look, the whole point of this is to say that they're going to do everything they can to make the base feel okay with plugging her in without even a single iota of a vote, right? Not even a sniff of a vote, right? They're not even going to consider it, right? They're going to plug her in. She's always been here. This was always the plan, right? That's it, right? Accept it. That's just the way it is. We've been seeing this on, across X, right? People are saying, well, the Dems and the GOP didn't even have a true primary. Trump was anointed well before anybody else got into it. No, there was a primary. People voted in it. There was a strong showing for Trump. Obviously, that's the direction that it was going, and the candidates Nikki and Ron DeSantis had to drop out because there was no pathway to victory, right? Why would you spend time and money on no pathway to victory? So they bailed out, but there was a true primary. There's no real primary for Kamala Harris, right? Like she was plugged in and anointed because of a couple things, right? Everyone thinks it's because she is truly the best candidate. Not really. The most important thing in elections is the ability to fundraise and money. The only person who's able in this time period, in this short amount of time they had, to take on any of the existing funds that was available for Joe Biden's campaign was Kamala Harris. So all of those funds immediately transfer to her if he drops out of the race and she becomes the candidate because they're on the same ticket together. Right? This was an automatic. She immediately gains access to those funds. Plus, there was a litany of people and donors in the Biden camp who were withholding funds and decided that, hey, the old man needs to go, plug in somebody that we can get behind and we'll donate. It could have been anybody. Anybody other than Biden would have received these donations. However, those donations plus the existing funds plus the existing infrastructure for a campaign transferring to Kamala Harris really made for this impressive $300-something million July, right? And everyone's going to tout that, like, oh, there's a lot of hope for Kamala. She's truly an impressive candidate. She's not a very good candidate, but the problem is, logistically, this was the best bet for them, right? And because of the short runway, this made the most sense, and I don't blame them. This is the right thing to do. And this is the thing. The Democratic Party is a good machine for getting people elected, right? That is the entire purpose. The Democratic Party is good about winning. They focus on winning. They circle the wagons better than the GOP every single time. It shows right now. Trump is undisciplined. Right, this goes back to the Kemp thing I just talked about earlier. Trump is undisciplined, and therefore people have to go out and defend what he's saying, right? I'm dealing with this daily. You got to defend it. How do you defend it, right? Like, how do you defend it against your own kind, right? Shooting against your brother, how do you defend that? You don't. And so it's just another wound that that never needed to happen. Didn't need to take place, right? These things never needed to happen. We didn't need to take place. We don't have to worry about this. But because we have an undisciplined candidate, we do. The Democrat Party has a plan. It's put into effect. Is it shallow? Yeah. Is it valuable to the United States? Is it actually probably a bad situation for us in the United States? Yeah, it's not. I can't imagine that a socialist and a far left California Democrat is really what the United States really wants in the Oval Office. I can't imagine that's the truth. That's the case, but the odds are better than not. That's what we're going to get, right? I don't know if it's an 8-year deal or not. That remains to be seen. But as of now, unless Trump starts to shift the spotlight right now is on him. This is what elections are. Elections are a referendum on the person. Whoever the election is a referendum on will lose the election, right? In this case, so previously the referendum was on Joe Biden, right? Then the debate exposed how really bad Joe Biden was, right? And the campaign was just a referendum on Joe Biden, and he was tanking the polls, and it was bad. It was dire. It was not going to be a problem. And the Trump campaign naively thought they can't replace him this time. It's too late, right? It's July. No one's going to replace somebody less than 6 months, 5 months out from the election, 4 months out from the election. Well, they were wrong. Dead wrong. And now they're spinning their wheels trying to catch up. And instead of doing the same thing they had done with Biden and then keyed in on bad policy, they have reverted back to shallow attacks that don't really ring with the middle ground voter. Anyway, unless something changes soon, we're getting too deep into this election season for this to really make the difference, right? We may end up with a Kamala Harris, a historical presidential candidate and a historical president-elect, right? Because that is the focus of the Democrat Party, is making history. They love making history. That is the focus. Whether it's good history or bad history, Democrats love to make history. That may be what we're going to run into, unless Trump can find a way to be disciplined and streamlined and efficient in the attack and turn the referendum from him to the bad job the Biden-Harris administration has performed. The Harris campaign is already linking themselves to Biden. Biden-Harris is everywhere now, right? Biden-Harris helped release these prisoners. Biden-Harris has done this. Biden-Harris has done this. If that's the case, then Biden-Harris sure as hell created the border issue. If that's the case, Biden-Harris sure as hell created the inflation issue, right? People in the United States are not so dumb to believe that Biden-Harris is only the good things, but only Biden did the bad things, right? That's just not the way it works. They have linked themselves together, and they continue to do that during the good things. All Trump has to do is go, great, Here's the great things that you think are great. They've also done the bad things. Which one's affecting you? Which one's affecting you? That's what they have to do. Are they going to do that? I don't know. There's not much time left. Voting starts in September. We literally have 4 weeks before early voting starts. I have no idea. It doesn't make any sense. Anyway, moving on from here. The so the best part about the last, let's call it week, has been this debate about Trump bailing on the debate. Okay. I mean, he accepted the debate with Joe Biden, and he said anywhere, anytime, strictly because he knew how feeble Joe Biden was, right? That's an easy debate to accept, right? Yeah, put me anywhere with the old man, let him be on his own. I know he can't handle it. Sure enough, that's what was exposed, right? We saw that. We all saw it firsthand. The funny part about this is, now that this has been established, Dems and the Dems saying, oh, Trump doesn't want to debate Kamala Harris? What do you mean? No. He doesn't want to debate Kamala Harris in the same way he'd set it up for the old man. Are you kidding me? Kamala Harris is not half dead, right? He's not going to be propped up with pulleys and strings, just moving his arms around. He can barely function. Kamala Harris is actually a good political operative. This is what we said. She's intelligent. And she can spin a word salad that'll make your mind spin, right? Whether it has actual grab-on content is up for debate. But the reality is, when she gets up in front of people, she might be able to convince a large portion of Americans that she's strong. And if she has the same advantages that Joe Biden was given, a dead human being, literally a corpse walking up onto that debate, then it's not a fair fight. Now, Trump is right to not accept an ABC invite. ABC clearly has it out for him. Whether or not or Fox can be a good middle ground is great. I don't know. But the reality is, neither of these two are willing to accept the away game debate, right? The away game debate. Trump went into CNN, debated Joe Biden. That was easy. It's like going into Oakland right now, right? Like for baseball. It's like going into Oakland. There's a pretty good chance you're going to beat Oakland at Oakland. No offense to Oakland A's fans. The reality is the team's just not that great, right? But there's a pretty good chance you could beat them. But every once in a while, they might be able to come back. They might be able to just spark something and really get to you. But the reality is, the odds are in your favor. The series, you'll win the series. You're going to win the series in Oakland. You may not win the game, right? And that was what happened on CNN, right, with Joe Biden. But with Kamala Harris, the time is so short. He has to be efficient with his debates, right? The debates need to be set up in a venue where he can really get people spotlighted in on poor policy, and I think that that's the intent. The problem is, if you put him back in an environment like he had with Joe Biden, with no one around, no crowd, everyone's focused in on just asking questions about his personality, things he's done in the past, things he said, not about his actual implemented policy and the successes or unsuccesses of them. You're going to run into a situation where it's just it's going to land flat-footed for him, and it'll make Kamala seem better than she actually is. She doesn't have to say anything. She's just going to exist, and that'll be fine. However, if you put her in an environment where they're going to truly debate their positions on policy, you may end up with a big shift back towards Trump, just because the majority of Americans do not want to be a part of the positions that Kamala Harris is historically a part of, right? Like we talked about this last time. She's a far left candidate. She's a California Democrat, and that should say everything you need to know, right? A California Democrat is always far left for the nation, and that's what she is. And so, if you had a debate where they actually debated policy, Trump could fumble over his words, pontificate, be silly or whatever, and still come out on top just because his positions right now, as he stands, are the appetite for the United States. That's where they exist as well. Middle left to middle right, right? That is where the United States greater electorate sits, right? However, that's not what the Democrat Party wants you to believe. They want you to believe that Donald Trump is a far right Nazi white supremacist, right? In reality, that's just not the case, right? He says stupid stuff, but his actual policy positions don't mirror that, right? While Kamala Harris has policy positions and record of voting on policy that mirror a far left administration. Right? She's on record doing that as a senator. And so, a true debate, finding a real neutral debate zone is going to be really hard for these two. And both are going to say, they're afraid to debate me, they're afraid to debate me, they're afraid to debate me. Who's that going to help? I don't know. The base kind of already is stuck with who they believe. The middle ground really doesn't see it that way either. They both, the middle ground people are seeing it as, yeah, he was supposed to debate Biden and he's not debating Biden anymore. Obviously the rules are going to change, right? I don't know. The question is, if they do debate, how much of it is going to be focused on policy? If it's not, if it's about character, and it's really shifted towards what people say and what people have done in terms of the public eye, there's a big problem for Trump, right? Because the Harris campaign, Kamala Harris has effectively been gone for the past 4 years. She's been out of the spotlight, and when she is in the spotlight, people come after her, and everyone goes, "Oh, she's an idiot," da 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 da, and she kind of disappears again, right? That's not been the case for Trump. Trump has been in the spotlight, and he's wanted to be in the spotlight, and he needed the spotlight in order to get to this position. He used the spotlight in order to win the GOP nomination a third time, and that's the reason for it, right? He's going to remain in the spotlight because that's what he needed to do, and he thinks that's what he needs to continue to do. So, I don't know. I'm not sold that a debate is actually even going to happen. I wouldn't be surprised if we end up with a series of these like those town halls. Remember the Trump Hillary town halls, where they walked around, and then we had some very famous lines from Trump, attacking Hillary, and that's what he wants. He wants those off the cuff one-liners to really pin his campaign to. I think that the Harris campaign is wise to that now that they've seen what he's done to Hillary, and what he could do to Joe if they got into that situation again. So they won't accept that. But the odds of it actually playing out in the GOP's favor is pretty low, right? He's done enough to dig a hole that that center 10% are really starting to think, I'm not excited to vote for either of these, right? Maybe they just don't vote, right? And if you get that center, that agnostic feeling towards both candidates, and people just opt not to vote, the Democrat Party's get out the vote machine is so much better than the GOP's. They will win solely on that metric, right? They will win solely on that metric without even debate, because their get out the vote machine is that much better. And the ground game is just better. Trump killed that in 2020, right? He was, don't go farm ballots, don't do this, da 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 da. We need to have all. Well, that cost him, right? Just denying all that cost him 100%. And it's gotten a little bit better now because they've realized that they need to fix that. But the problem is we're not seeing the results of that, right? We're not seeing the results of that. And I don't know what's going to change. So I know I didn't talk about this earlier. I'm going to shift gears one more time, but the down ballot voting, is completely different landscape than it was 6 weeks ago, right? 6 weeks ago, everyone viewed Joe Biden as basically a loser, and that The down ballot, no one was excited to go out for down ballot, to go out to vote, and it was going to change the down ballot voting. But if you were a Democrat senator or House rep or really running for election this year in any as a Dem on any ticket, you were nervous. You were nervous because you knew that with Biden on the ticket, there was not going to be a drive for voters to show up and vote for him. And if they weren't going to show up to vote for him, sure as hell weren't going to vote for you. So we were in a position, GOP conservatives were in a position 6 weeks ago to not only win the presidency, but to dominate down ballot voting. And that was massive because you could affect governor races, Senate races, House races, local elections. You were going to change the course of a lot of district attorney situations, right? There's always the debate about far leftist district attorneys versus conservative district attorneys. All these things were on the ballot, and they were strongly dominated by the fact that the GOP was excited to get out to vote for Trump, or not necessarily vote for Trump, but to vote against Joe Biden or for Trump. It didn't matter, right? They had a much more excited base. But now, just with the pick of Kamala Harris, and I think this was the original intent. I think originally the Dem Party thought, okay, Harris is not well liked. I guarantee she's going to outperform Joe Biden, and the down ballot voting will definitely receive a major boost because of this, right? We're going to get a major boost because of her just being on the ballot versus Joe Biden. So the intent was, let's save the election and prevent us from getting wrecked in every possible state by putting her on the ticket. I don't think they actually believed it would be as successful as it's been in this honeymoon phase, but it's caused a problem, right? Like this is such a novelty moment that while most people don't want the left Biden-Harris administration policy, Trump continues to whittle away at the welcoming large tent philosophy that they had by saying and doing things like rejecting Brian Kemp or attacking race of Kamala for no reason, right? Things like that, right? This useless, not really effective attacks. So we still have some time. Conservatives, don't be weary. We still have a little bit of time, but we're in the fourth quarter, right? This isn't a halftime situation. We're in fourth quarter. Everyone's doing this. Fourth quarter. Raise your hands. Getting ready for it because early voting is going to be a problem, right? It's going to be an issue, and if the GOP doesn't have a ground game established, I don't really know what they're at now, but if the GOP doesn't have a ground game established, we're in for just a mirror of what occurred in 2020, right? Just an exact replica of that. So that is the end of the At My Garage Again podcast, or the AMGA podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Samarin. We'll catch you next time. I don't know when it's going to be. I got 2 kids, real young, and I'm married, and so I had a full-time job. So I do this when I can. I'll get back to you soon. Thanks.